Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of the participants in the chat box. I love seeing so many familiar names of friends and colleagues that I've known for so many years. Thank you for taking the time to join the town hall. The purpose of today's town hall is to really give you a little bit of a sense of what some of the things are that I have heard during my listening tour. I am slowly approaching the end of my second month on the job, and just so excited that I've been able to engage with many, many members and also those that are very close to the organization throughout my first couple of months. As I stated in my first day letter, one of the first things I thought was really, really important was to go on a listening tour and really listen to what our members had to say about where they feel the organization needs to go in the future. So what I want to do today, actually, I'm going to put some of you to work as well, because I want to hear some advice about the direction that we should be going in. But first, what I want to do is actually share some of the things that we heard in the listening tour, and then also to have you all break out into different groups, and we are going to ask you some questions about how we might be able to actually bring some of those recommendations to life. And then we're going to take some time to have some report outs from those breakout rooms and then talk a little bit about next steps. So let me actually start by talking a little bit about the listening tour. These are the different audiences that I actually spoke to. Our listening tour was actually hosted by McKinley Advisors, who also helped us. I got to know them a little bit when I was the chair of the ad hoc committee on the future of leadership in college admission. And so it almost seemed like the perfect segue that they would help us by really hosting our listening tour, so that while we were actually on the Zoom calls, I could listen and really sort of take the advice of all of our members. As you can see, we really tried to gather with as many different kinds of groups as possible. I thought it was really important to have a diverse representation from across the membership. You'll see here when I say the word counseling community, we met with high school counselors, public, private, independent educational consultants. We met with CBO counselors. We met with admission officers and chief enrollment officers, but also with former leaders of the organization, industry partners that feed into our work, different kind of advocates for the organization. And I also thought it was really important to include new professionals, so young admission officers and high school counselors that were about 1 to 3 years into the profession, and really hear their voices about where they feel the future of the organization lies. Next slide. So here are some of the initial themes that emerged directly from the listening tour. The first is a strong support for NACAC and a deep appreciation for the community and its connections. I think one of the things that I found really uplifting is that despite some of the challenges that our members felt they wanted us to hear, there was really this consensus across the board that most professionals in the post-secondary education pipeline really felt like they needed NACAC as core to their professional development and to their professional community. The second is a belief in NACAC and the fact that it can improve and drive change, and the fact that the members are really interested in supporting that change. And one of the things that I heard really deeply over and over again is that NACAC can actually become an advocacy organization that takes on really big challenges as they relate to the work of our members. And so when we talked about driving change, what really mattered to our members is that NACAC took a leading voice in those platforms. One of the big themes that emerged, and I'm not surprised about this given who our members are and their passion in this particular area, was a desire for greater diversity, equity, and inclusion within the organization, within our membership and who we serve, but also a greater desire for transparency. And transparency not just within the organization, but also within the leadership. And then there were a lot of questions about really asking the organization to grapple with who we actually serve. What is NACAC's mission? Are we an organization that serves the professionals who serve the students, or do we also serve students and families? And there was a great desire for actual clarity around those issues. Next slide. So one of the questions that we actually asked our participants was, I am a member of NACAC because, and we asked them to finish that sentence. So I'll pause here and allow you to take a look at some of these responses. I really thought the one from a higher ed leader was kind of fun, who said, why NACAC? For the professional development, information, networking, representation, mentoring, and friendships. Oh, and it's a lot of fun. We did hear a lot about how fun they feel our community and our network is. Next slide. So another theme that emerged was this theme of transparency. And really, there wasn't one group that I met with that didn't point this out. And here's sort of the sub-themes that we heard throughout the tour. The first is that our members want transparency around NACAC's process and decision-making. One of the things that many of our members, and in particular our younger members, wanted to know is, how do we actually get involved? What are the different ways that we can move up in the leadership? How can we be part of the decision making? And so many of our members were asking NACAC to really be more transparent around some of these issues. There also is a very clear need for clarity of roles within the leadership. I heard the questions often, what is the role of the affiliate councils? So the presidents of all of the different regional associations. And what is the role of the board versus the staff? And how are some of those roles distinguished from each other? And so one of the things we clearly realize is that we need to do a better job of helping our members understand those different kinds of roles and what the opportunities are. Another one was ensuring clear and consistent communications between NACAC and its stakeholders. So it was very clear that our members want more communication, but done in a way that is digestible, done in a way where it doesn't, for example, crowd up your email, but in different kinds of platforms where you do most of your work. And then there's also a need for a trusted source of college admissions information that is easily accessible. I heard over and over again that our members want NACAC to be the trusted source for college admissions in the United States and around the world, but that the information and the content knowledge that we are providing needs to be easily accessible and available to all of our members. Next slide. So here are some quotes around the issue of transparency, and I will just pause so you have a moment to read some of them. One that really stood out for me is NACAC can communicate all day long, but the trickle down is a problem. There are leaders that do great work being transparent, but if the only person on the mailing list is your boss and your boss doesn't forward things or isn't held accountable for that, then what? And I think hopefully our new membership model will help address some of that, but it really gives us a lot of food for thought for how we communicate with members across the board, even if you aren't the director of college counseling at your school or the chief enrollment officer at your university. Next slide. So diversity, equity, and inclusion were also obviously huge themes. I would say probably the strongest theme that emerged during the listening tour. And really what the biggest theme that I found important is that there is a real critical need to listen to and include all members and not just members that are the most vocal, the loudest on social media, for example, or well-known individuals. One quote that really stuck out at me is this term of NACAC famous. Several people mentioned the fact that when someone gets NACAC famous, they stay NACAC famous. And I think what they really mean by that is that there are certain professionals who get into the leadership roles at NACAC, who have a lot of the platforms at NACAC. And I heard particularly from younger audiences and diverse members across the organization that they want different voices represented in the leadership, at the conference, and at panels, for example. The other theme here is that NACAC needs to demonstrate the value of membership to less represented organizations. There was a key desire across many, many different populations for the inclusion of community colleges, HBCUs, more CBOs, smaller rural schools, and growing their presence. And so that was definitely something that all of our members could agree on. And then there was a lot of conversation around including populations that are less represented and putting them really at the center of our work. And so there was mention of marginalized group, younger members, first generation counselors, but also students, and really trying to encourage them to take leadership roles within the organization. One of the recommendations was about also using COVID. Given that we have actually moved so much of our programming online, one of the recommendations has been to continue virtual programming and maybe making that one of the avenues at which we open the doors a little bit wider for members and non-members to access our content. Next slide. So here's a couple of quotes around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'll just pause. I thought the quote that was really powerful: over 90% of students attend public schools, so a national organization should be representative of that, and we are currently not. Next slide. A few more quotes here. Okay, next slide. So one of the other themes that came up throughout the tour was NACAC as a knowledge source. And I have to admit, for those of you that read the ad hoc report that we released yesterday, I was actually really inspired by the fact that what I heard from our members during the listening tour also very much aligned with the discussions of the ad hoc committee on the future of leadership in college admissions. Both groups were really passionate that NACAC really needs to become the go-to resource for information in college admissions. And the key here is to make sure that the information that NACAC is providing is delivered in a lot of different ways that people can consume it. We talked about social media, a revamp of the website and making sure the website is user-friendly, podcast, just lots of different spaces where you, our members, live. And there was also a desire to create content that is easily available and digestible to students and their families. Next slide. So these two themes sort of go hand in hand. Technology was a big point of discussion, and I think it was made very clear to us that our members want NACAC to really go through a technology audit and to take a look at how it can actually upgrade its current systems. There were examples like upgrading the NACAC exchange, updating the way that we actually deliver the information, and also using technology not just to provide the content knowledge, but also to engage. So some examples were some of our SIG group leaders, our special interest groups, were really interested in a particular platform that NACAC might be able to provide for them to engage with each other and engage with their members. But if you look at the screen, there are other ideas here for how we actually might upgrade our technology to continue to be relevant to our members. Next slide. The other theme that was actually quite evident across all of the different groups was this notion of the mission and vision of the organization. Every group that we spoke to wants NACAC to really take up a mission and vision exercise and clearly define who the organization serves. You heard me talk a little bit earlier about the fact that many of our members are asking, who do we serve? Do we serve the professionals? Do we serve students and families? Is there a clear definition? And a couple of things that our members wanted to make sure that we include in that mission and vision, once we sort of move towards that kind of clarity, is making sure that the mission is relevant and guides us into the future, that it is a guiding star, that it represents you, the members, and our stakeholders, but also that protects higher education and advocates for higher education as a public good in this country and around the world. Next slide. Here are some comments around mission and vision. I particularly like this one from an affiliate president who say, a good mission statement is something I can use as we are having to make tough decisions about what to do and what not to pursue. It should help us recognize if we've steered away from our lane. And that is something that is deeply on our mind. Next slide. So we asked this question towards the end, what is one thing that should never change about NACAC? And the top ones here were the community and the camaraderie, the conferences and convenings, the serving of students, a dedication to ethics, and knowledge sharing among peers. Next slide. And when we asked the thing that should change, 27% said that we needed a stronger representation and greater inclusion across our membership. We need to continue to reduce barriers to access, and in particular, the barriers to access the resources that NACAC has. Stronger support for our affiliates as well as our special interest groups, and an articulation of the clear value proposition, especially for organizations that are not members of NACAC, and also a huge ask for NACAC to be bold and fearless in advocating for its members, not just on the policy front, but at whatever issue they seem to be facing at the moment. Next slide. So when you registered for this particular town hall, we actually asked you to submit questions. And I'm delighted that we had over 315 questions that were submitted by many of you. And obviously we won't have time to answer those questions today, but I did want to show you what some of those themes were. The biggest one being the impact of the pandemic and beyond for students and the shifting admissions landscape, college fares, financial implications, but also lots of questions about what are NACAC's future initiatives, what is NACAC's financial health and general direction, and then lots of questions around the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion in NACAC and how it's going to work to make college more accessible and equitable. And so really what I would like to do is we are actually going to have you grapple with some of these questions when we go into the breakout groups. But my commitment is also that through my speech at the conference, as well as different kinds of communications that I am going to be sharing throughout the fall, I will make sure to address a lot of these areas so that you know exactly the direction that NACAC is going in.
We have some quick report outs that we're going to do here. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask each group to go one by one. The first three groups 1, 2, and 3, were asked to tackle the question, given NACAC's significant financial constraints, how can we as members provide more access to our collective knowledge and resources? I've got my annoying little timer here. I know that's not fair to ask each group to report out in 2 minutes, but that's the time that we have to work with today. We know that you all are very, very busy this time of year. So I'm going to ask Lauren from group 1 to start us off and give us 2 minutes of the themes from your group.
Thanks, George. So in group 1, we decided that success in this question looked like ease of access, timeliness, immediacy of information, relevance, thoroughness, and high level of member engagement. And one of the ideas that had a lot of support was the idea of a NACAC app that has professional development options, all the webinar recordings all in one place. There's a lot of support for that. There's also support for an online presence that isn't solely webinars, a resource page with bite-sized modules of information, a better system of archiving and organizing those resources, and to really create a knowledge bank that's up to date, that's easy to update, and easy to search. We definitely want to see Zoom options continue even post-pandemic to make sure that we increase access. We like the idea of member-to-member sessions, especially to include younger members in more DEI initiatives. There's no need to wait until a conference. We'd like to see a repository for counselor networking, ways to bring new members into the fold, a central location to connect professionals to affiliates and other mentors within NACAC, things like virtual coffee chats, really use our human resources in friendly members to recruit new members and provide resources, maybe monthly member check-ins. Connecting to Angel's point that targeting public education counselors is an essential need and an untapped resource, and we really want to promote NACAC's multiple resources and offer discounts to strapped districts as a priority. How the affiliates are supported by NACAC in these times of crisis will be critical. NACAC has to work through the affiliates to make things work for everyone. The affiliates have boots on the ground and are maybe even better able to provide those resources. So the suggestion was made to survey affiliates to see what affiliate resources are out there and pool those affiliate resources so that NACAC isn't necessarily reinventing the wheel. And I yield 13 seconds to the floor.
Okay, thanks so much, Lauren. Appreciate your speedy delivery of those. So let's go to group 2, and I think Brandon is our spokesperson for group 2.
Hi, thank you. So much of the same things were brought up in our group, similar to Lauren in group 1, but we do want to emphasize that we want to continue virtual engagement opportunities as much as possible. Some of the NACAC programming that we have could be cost prohibitive that requires in-person attendance, like some of our conferences. So we wanted to see if we can further provide more virtual content engagement opportunities for our membership. We recognize that NACAC has ability to use different listservs, and we have access to different special interest groups and subgroups, but we wanted to see if there's more way that we can consolidate that in a way that can be easily accessible to our members to get connected with folks that they wanted to get connected with. One of the things we also advocated was consolidating on our knowledge source, building a repository. So similar to what was brought up in group 1, this repository would be able to bring in documents, podcasts, recordings, everything that we feel that would be in the best interest to serve our membership in providing best practices and tools. Again, it's a place where folks can go to and look at up and see what's happening. And also a way to share affiliate knowledge with the NACAC membership as well too. One of the members of the group did mention that a lot of especially some of the younger and newer staff get their knowledge from the affiliate. So how can we expand the knowledge beyond the affiliate level as well too? And one of the other things that we also wanted to make sure is to clarify, what does access mean? Access to whom and for whom, and who are we trying to serve and trying to provide this access to our collective knowledge and resources? And another example is bringing up quarterly surveys to see what is important for the membership as well too. And I yield back 8 seconds of my time.
All right, thank you, Brandon. And I think we have Jeff from group 3.
So I'll be taking all the time that hasn't been used. So it's good to see so many friends on the call here. So I have 6 sort of buckets that our group kind of divided it into. And, when we looked at this question, one of the first things that was brought up, which I thought was pretty timely, kind of dovetails into a lot of our other suggestions here, is what are we as NACAC trying to provide from both accessible but also digestible information that's both solid, but at the same time not overwhelming in this virtual environment that we're all in. I think that was a great sort of entry point to 5 things that I'm gonna mention. The first being, it's been mentioned a couple of times, and that's getting our resources out. And what we mean by that is partnering with other organizations like NACAC that's doing this work. So groups like ASCA, some other CBOs, NCAN, NASFA, and looking at doing some of the work that even is being done at the affiliate level. One of the examples was, drive-in workshops and seeing if that can be shifted to a virtual model nationally. Another suggestion came up was looking at, a price for live content, but maybe reduced prices for, sort of snippets or chunks of that. and also looking at the opportunity of maybe allowing certain membership types to have coupons or codes or discounts. Looking at another way of looking at this is targeting CBOs to help prove our value before we ask them to be members. So take our content out there before we ask individuals in the field to be members, and then looking at the way of maybe helping support our members in their educational journeys. The last thing I'll mention, and it was a good point that we ended our call with, and that was programming facilitators. So the people doing NACAC's work need to represent a wider swath. So sometimes the best voices aren't always given an opportunity to have their voice heard. So having said that, I will give the 4 seconds of my time back to the group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So now we're going to move on to groups 4, 5, and 6, and they were tasked with answering the question, how can NACAC members help the association be stronger advocates for our students and families? We heard that really come up specifically in all of the questions that were submitted was, again, in this time of need, how can we do that? So I'm going to ask Cicely from group 4 to kick us off.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. So some of the themes that we had in our group were technology, the code of ethics and best practices, public schools, working with low-income students and families, and kind of like this general role of NACAC. And I want to just kind of highlight some of the comments that came up. So as far as understanding the role of NACAC, I think it's still questionable for a lot of our colleagues. What does NACAC actually do? So if we're advocating for students and families, how does NACAC communicate with students and families outside of members? So I think that probably needs to be a little clear. Or are they just working through the professionals to then reach students and families? So what is NACAC doing for students and families is really the question. The other piece that came up was just the use of technology. This is the time that we really can use that tool to reach out to families. One suggestion came up about having webinars for students. So I know we have a ton of webinars for our members, but why doesn't NACAC do webinars for actual students? And the thought came out that NACAC isn't a household name, so this might be a way to get NACAC's name out there to our students and families beyond the profession. One of the other comments that came up was just how can NACAC be the leading voice, providing high quality practice. Maybe we could provide job descriptions to principals and giving them support on how to work with counselors. Some other things that came up was just NACAC doesn't do a great job working with transfer students and students with disabilities. And then the biggest issue was just working with low-income students and how do we really provide resources for counselors who work with low-income students, and then also providing resources for students and families themselves. There's a lot more here, but I have 4 seconds left and I'm going to end.
All right, thank you so much, Cicely. And I think we have Charlie from group 5 who's up next. Charlie, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
So, like Cicely, our group really kind of divided into a couple of really major sections. One was looking at what affiliate and affiliate members can do, and then looking at NACAC and what NACAC membership and NACAC as an organization or association can do. So I'll start with the affiliates. We really spent some time talking about how we could strengthen the affiliates and engage members and just get that part rolling and get it off the ground. We talked a little bit about increasing representation and increasing opportunities for professional development and access, and how we get those resources out to our affiliate members. One of the things that came up really strongly toward the end of our time was using virtual or technology aspects to really start linking not just high schools and colleges, but also independent counselors and some of these CBOs and other organizations that shoot toward student access and student success, really finding a way to bring us all together around the table now, especially now that we have all these virtual options, especially to help those rural or underserved or underfunded schools. So that's really kind of on the affiliate side. And then looking at NACAC and what we could do both as NACAC members and NACAC as an organization, we really spent some time talking about how NACAC really could and maybe should be a stronger advocate, really forcing the federal government to start enforcing protections on students in terms of like May 1 deadlines and things like that. And then for NACAC to be more direct and provide us with the resources to be more direct in challenging some of these for-profit organizations, ACT, SAT, the predatory for-profit schools, those kind of things that really that can keep students from feeling that success or feeling like they have the knowledge that they need, and then helping us create policy for how we can actually promote access and eligibility for students. So, and I'm out of my 2 minutes. So,
All right, thank you so much, Charlie. And we have Patrick from Group 6.
Right, okay, just unmuted. Hi, Patrick O'Connor, Michigan ACAC. So actually kind of had a nice discussion that all sort of fell together very nicely. I think the key piece that sort of leapt forward to pick up on the groups 4 and 5 also is really sort of the notion of advocacy in a couple of sections. First, advocacy for parents and students in general. Very often, there was a sense among the group that NACAC is good in responding to situations once they occur. What we would like to see is NACAC taking a stronger lead in shaping the discussion, the overall public discussion about access to education, and advocate for students and families in advance through the process. And so taking more of a proactive rather than reactive response there. Also advocating more for students and families, sort of indirectly, but supporting the work of school counselors and CBO folks and folks that need the support of administrators, and making sure that we're preparing our counselors in ways that allow them to take the case to their administrators and say, here's why we need to join NACAC. Here's why this is an important thing. And to make sure that we get some training to the counselors to speak about that in terms of what one of our group members said was a real nice notion of a combination of data and storytelling. And that's really a great way to win over your points is to sort of use a little bit of head, a little bit of heart. Also talked about refurbishing the Students' Bill of Rights and being very clear and saying, you know, colleges need to be transparent about unmet need and being very honest with students, particularly first-generation students. So that's a quick summary.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. So our last 3 groups were tackled with the question, how can we as members do a better job of ensuring all voices are represented in the association? And that's obviously a theme that's already come up a number of times, but let's hear from those groups about what they discussed. So I think in Group 7, we have Kent that's going to kick us off.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon to my NACAC friends. Good morning to those of you that are still before noon. Our group had a great discussion. We first started to talk about what are all voices. Does that include students and parents? And probably getting clarity about that piece of it would help drive some of the answers to this question. But more specifically, our group spoke about the price of membership can sometimes be an impediment, particularly for public school counselors, CBOs, and perhaps some smaller colleges. One of the members in our group who had been in the profession for a while had indicated that she was finally able to attend Guiding the Way to Inclusion conference this summer because it was virtual and it was an affordable option for when it was only available on the ground, it was not available to her. So we did see virtual as an opportunity to connect with diverse voices. Sometimes it's harder for people to take multiple days away from the office, and that can be a real challenge. So taking the content and doing it in smaller bits would be particularly helpful. But we did talk about ensuring more voices in these manners sometimes will cost money, and so trying to balance that with the finances of the of the association is going to be critical. We also talked about voices are often in conflict, and so if we bring in more voices, we'll have more conflict, and we're going to need to continue to work through that, and that's not necessarily always a bad thing. And then a couple of folks spoke about the association has gotten so large, and for younger folks, it sometimes can be very difficult to try to insert your voice. There's no easy mechanism to do that. If you email in the exchange, there's thousands of people watching. If you stand up and speak at a membership meeting, there's thousands of people watching. Some of the sessions are really large. So there's no mechanism for one-on-one easy raising of issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kent, appreciate it. And in group 8, we have Lisa.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to report that there was, as expected, enthusiasm for the idea of increasing the way people are represented within our association. We focused a good deal on members and their road to leadership. And we acknowledge that there are barriers, financial, structural, and frankly, unintentional, to people's growth within the association. There was a suggestion, a statement that NACAC, for those people who have not been involved for decades, is confusing. And the idea of an intentional onboarding process for new NACAC members, either as their first involvement or as they transition from their affiliate roles. There was a suggestion that in terms of the financial ability to take on leadership roles, committee work, and so on, that NACAC might produce a series of testimonial videos of people who've done it before to help convince bosses and deans and VPs to make that investment of time and money for their teams. We talked about the fact that NACAC can be, and we thought should be, a community of mentors, and that we might be focusing on reaching out to groups of professionals who are newer, younger, marginalized, to help them bring them into the fold, and to encourage them to speak up and take on positions of growing leadership. We talked a little bit about that idea that you have to have someone's hand on your shoulder, and we spun it to positive, to say that engagement and success in the affiliate can encourage others to push you toward NACAC leadership and NACAC participation. And we thought that more opportunities like this one, open discussion of a particular topic, are great.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate group 8 spinning a negative into a positive idea. And we're saving the best for last year. We're gonna finish up with Michelle in group 9.
Hi, everybody. One of the common threads that many of the members of Group 9 introduced and supported was to really look local, look within our own offices, our own departments, and within those spheres of influence that we all do have and may undervalue, to reach out and mentor new members. If you are a presenter or you're considering presenting, look around and consider, who's missing and what voices are not being represented, and then reach out and invite those voices into those opportunities. If you're a delegate, consider your responsibility and platform to represent the voices that are not present, that you have the power to represent. For those of us that have more resources, maybe more support from our employers, to be able to look around and within our communities and identify those that don't have as much support or resources and partner with them, mentor them. And to also, how do we communicate the value of our membership, the value of NACAC, and all of us having our experiences to be able to do that well. We did have a conversation about NACAC's image and identity. Image, the problem that many see us as an elitist institution, and can they see themselves belonging? I love this quote: "We have a lot to offer, but we have to put the hay down where the goats can get it." Thank you, Keith White, for that quote. And also just the impact that SPGP and CEPP and the consent decree have had on all of us with kind of, best said, hole in our heart. And that scaffolding is missing. So we need to be as involved as possible. That's it.
Great, thank you, George. And thank you, everybody. And it was so great to see lots of friends presenting as well and lots of comments in the chat box. This was actually really, really helpful. And I do want you to know that there were people in all of the rooms taking notes for us. So we're going to be taking that back. And if you would like to send anything to us, my public email address is ceo@nacacnet.org. And so any comments, ideas, please feel free to send them to us. The listening tour was the what. What happens next is the how. And actually, you know, this was a really small snippet of the how, and I would love to host more events like this, maybe a little bit smaller so more people can feel like they actually can speak. But, you know, one of the things that's been deeply on my mind is how we galvanize the energy of all of our members. There are 14,000 of us, and on the staff in Arlington, Virginia, there are 36. So there are a lot more of you than we actually have staff. And part of what I've been thinking about is how we scale the work. You know, Lisa talked a little bit about a mentorship system, but how do we do that on advocacy? How do we do that in all the different areas that we care so deeply about? And so I'm definitely going to be taking all of this back, not just to the board, but to the affiliate presidents, the special interest group leaders as well, and also to different committees at NACAC to think about how do we actually, now that we have the what, how do we actually operationalize all of this to create the NACAC of the future? And during the conference, you're going to hear me, I'm going to do the opening speech, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where the association is, some of our challenges, what we've heard, but also how I hope that all of you can get involved to help us move forward in the future. So I just really wanted to say thank you. I do wish we had more time, but I want to be respectful of the fact that you've already given us an hour and 15 minutes of your time. I want you to know that I've been thinking about all of you on the ground in schools, all over the country and the world. I know how challenging your positions are right now. And if there is anything NACAC can do to help you, please let us know. And I did want to give a special acknowledgement and would like for all of us to hold our friends in the West, in California and Oregon and Washington, who are really struggling right now with all of the fires. Please hold them in your thoughts and prayers. And again, if NACAC can do anything to be helpful, please let us know. But I look forward to seeing you all, hopefully in person very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
I am going to then turn it back over to Angel